Today, we are diving into a pretty radical idea in economics. We're talking about when a country basically fires its own currency and decides to hire the US dollar instead. It's called dollarization. And believe me, it is one of the most extreme financial moves a nation can possibly make.
Just think about that for a second. What if the money in your wallet, the money you use for literally everything, was suddenly replaced by a foreign currency? It sounds kind of wild, right? Almost like science fiction. But for some countries, this isn't a movie plot. It's a real and often desperate solution to some very, very real problems.
All right, so let's put a name to it. The official term is dollarization, and it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. A country just says, you know what? We're done with our own currency. From this point forward, the US dollar is the official money here. It's a total reboot of their entire monetary system.
So why on earth would a country do something so drastic? Well, it all boils down to a huge trade-off. On the one hand, you get instant credibility. By adopting the dollar, you can hopefully tame insane inflation and bring in some stability. But the cost? Oh, the cost is huge. You lose all your monetary independence. You can't print your own money anymore. You can't set your own interest rates. You are quite literally handing over the keys to your economic car to another country.
Okay, to really get how this works in the real world, let's start with Panama. Panama is a really interesting case because they didn't dollarize because of some crazy crisis. Nope. For them, it was a decision they made right from the very beginning. They were basically born this way.
Panama's path to the dollar was incredibly short. They get their independence in 1903, and boom, by 1904, the US dollar is their official currency. This wasn't some panicked reaction. It was a strategic choice made by a brand new nation, figuring out its place in the world.
So why the dollar and why so fast? Well, it really came down to three main things. First, the Panama Canal. You need a stable, trusted currency for that kind of global trade. Second, massive US influence, which helped reassure American investors. And third, and this is key, Panama never even created its own central bank. You can't give up monetary policy if you never had it to begin with, right?
And that, right there, is the perfect way to sum it up. Panama's story isn't about surrendering power. It's about a country that decided, from day one, that it wasn't even going to build that kind of power. That's what makes them such a unique starting point for this whole discussion.
All right, let's totally shift gears now and look at Ecuador, because Ecuador's story could not be more different from Panama's. If Panama's dollarization was a calm, calculated decision at birth, Ecuador's was a desperate, last-ditch move to pull the economy back from the brink of total collapse.
Just look at this timeline. It was an absolute perfect storm of disaster. In the late 90s, Ecuador got hit by everything at once. A global financial crisis, a devastating El Niño weather event, and then the whole banking system just imploded. The result, their currency, the sucre, just went into an absolute freefall.
And when I say freefall, I am not kidding. By the year 2000, inflation hit a mind-blowing 96%. That means prices were almost doubling every single year. Imagine your life savings basically turning into dust. The economy wasn't just in trouble, it was staring into the abyss.
So, with their backs completely against the wall, what did the government do? They pulled the emergency brake. They dollarized to stop the hyperinflationary bleeding, to try and bring back any kind of public confidence, and to keep the entire financial system from just evaporating. It was a move of pure desperation.
And here's the key takeaway from Ecuador. For them, dollarization kind of worked. It absolutely stopped the death spiral and stabilized things. But it wasn't a magic wand. Think of it more like a tourniquet. It stopped the bleeding, but it didn't heal the wound. All the deep underlying economic problems, they were still there.
Which brings us to our final, and maybe most complicated case, Argentina. This is a country with a long, painful history of economic chaos. And in Argentina, dollarization isn't just an academic idea, it's a fiery political debate that has been raging for decades. Now, Argentina has actually tried something like this before. Back in the 90s, they had a convertibility plan where they locked their peso one-to-one with the dollar. And for a while, it seemed like a miracle. Inflation vanished, the economy boomed, but it was all a house of cards. The peso became way too strong, which killed their exports, debt piled up, and then in 2001, the whole thing just collapsed in the most spectacular, painful way imaginable.
The ghost of that 2001 crisis still haunts Argentina, but incredibly, the debate over dollarization is back and it is fierce. On one side, you have people who say it's the only way to finally kill the country's chronic inflation problem. But on the other side, people argue that for an economy as big as Argentina's, giving up your currency is just a recipe for a different kind of disaster.
And that really gets to the heart of it for Argentina. The issue isn't just about the mechanics of the currency. It's about a complete and total breakdown of trust in the institutions that are supposed to manage the economy. You can change the money, sure, but if you don't fix that fundamental lack of trust, you're just slapping a Band-Aid on a massive wound.
So let's zoom out. We've got three countries with three completely different stories. You have Panama's pragmatic birth, Ecuador's desperate surgery, and Argentina's endless, agonizing debate. The dollarization dilemma is clearly not a simple one. So let's tie it all together. What have we really learned here?
When you lay it all out like this, the differences are just so stark, aren't they? The context, the motivation, the basic economic structures, they're all over the place. Panama was starting from scratch. Ecuador was putting out a 5-alarm fire. And Argentina is just stuck in this painful cycle. Understanding these deep differences is absolutely critical to seeing why dollarization is not a one-size-fits-all solution.
So is there a formula for when this actually works? Well, the evidence seems to point to a few key conditions. It tends to work best when the number one problem is a total lack of credibility on inflation. When the economy is relatively small and open to trade, and this is a big one, when it's backed up by real tough fiscal discipline from the government.
And that really brings us to our main conclusion. Dollarization isn't a cure. It's not a magic pill that fixes a sick economy. It's really a commitment device. It's a country basically throwing up its hands and saying, we can't be trusted to manage our own money, so we're going to chain ourselves to a system we can trust. It's an admission of failure and an act of outsourcing your economic credibility to the U.S. Federal Reserve.
Which leaves us with the big final question, right? When a country does this, is it a smart, strategic commitment to a more stable future? Or is it just a desperate act of surrender, a sign that a country is taking control or admitting it's lost control completely? As we've seen, there are no easy answers here. It's a massive gamble, and for the nations that take it, the stakes could not be higher.